Welcome to Beyond the Box. Today we're speaking with Mark Jenner, Managing Director of Interbrand New Zealand. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Pleasure.
With your reach as an international brand strategy company, what developments do you see that are done internationally that the local brands could use in New Zealand?
Look, I think the biggest area of development in the last few years is anything to do with growth, actually. Any initiatives, approaches, IP, models that help businesses focus on growing the top line. And if you think about it, we're coming out of the global financial crisis 4 or 5 years ago, which was all about controlling cost and governance. Fine, right? But now that we're out of that period, businesses are being rewarded, organizations are being rewarded if they can grow the top line. The biggest challenges we see are the drive for market share, the drive for talent, which is a huge kind of area and almost a separate topic. Mostly the need to actually implement innovative ideas. So innovation is a topic. I see a lot of clients saying, I'm not short on ideas. How do I actually get those to market? That's the key. And I think a lot of people could benefit if they focus on that area.
Sure. There's an argument now, I suppose, that branding is actually losing its importance because consumers and consumer understanding has actually increased over the years, and they can see through, I suppose, what marketers are trying to do. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I totally agree with the question. I think the question always implies what is a brand, right? So you have to say, well, what is a brand in order to answer that question? You have to understand what a brand is. And I find in my work, a lot of people get confused between identities, logos, call to actions, catchphrases. You know, what is that a brand, or what exactly is that? So for me, the best definition of a brand is a brand is a picture the mind creates. Right? A brand is a picture the mind creates. And if you think about that, every single contact you have with the brand will help you draw that picture. And because we're human, we can't help but start branding everything we come into contact with, right? So I'm already branding you, you're branding me, I brand this kind of the studio.
Sure.
And I think what consumer knowledge is doing is enabling people to share their views in a way they could never do before, right? So in a way where people used, particularly across countries and across borders, so that kind of knowledge is transferring at a really fast rate, and of course people can do a lot more research around perhaps the functional side of the brand. I think there's 3 levels of engagement now for branding, right? And it makes a brand, it makes the person responsible for the business. It means they need to think along these lines. There's three types of interaction. There's the kind of old school interaction where as a company you create a message and you send it out, right?
Yep.
And you hope that it's decoded the right way, right? A really important principle is your consumers position you or brand you, not the other way around. You don't own the brand, they own the brand, right? So in old school marketing, you sent a message and they decoded it and they behaved a certain way. I think that's still valid. I think there's a case for businesses stating what they stand for and sending out that message, and hopefully it's decoded the right way. What the internet's done is give us a third. I'll come back to the second kind of part of messaging. There's a third part now, which is around consumers just simply sharing their own views, right? So the rise of social and other platforms that let people express themselves, and companies and organisations can't do a thing about that, right? So they need to kind of get their heads around that. And then there's a middle ground where they can kind of co-create, and I think that's a really interesting space. So I don't think it's that consumer knowledge is down-weighting the importance of brand. I think it's just reshaping it, and people need to understand exactly how those dynamics are working, because ultimately you're still trying to build a consistent story and build the picture and be positioned the way you want to be positioned.
Sure. Creativity in design has been important in the past with a lot of marketing, but do you think it's lost some of its power recently with data-driven marketing?
I think that's a risk. I think the need for creativity and good design is still paramount. I think if you think about a brand in terms of relevancy and differentiation, I think data-driven marketing talks directly to the relevancy. So the power of data is it can deliver me and you a message that's more tailored, more specific, more personalised, and therefore the relevancy kind of volume can be turned right up. So I think data plays a role there, but it can't differentiate and make your brand and your story different to the competition, right? Because we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think creativity and design is absolutely critical for that differentiation. So I think the two need to work together, and one at the expense of the other is going to downweight your efforts.
I suppose we also have this service experience design, and that's things like consumer journey mapping.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for New Zealand, I suppose, managers as to what they could do?
Yeah, look, I think the whole area is because it's emerging, right? I think my advice would be there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, right? And there's a lot of jargon. And in my experience, the amount of jargon is inversely related to the level of expertise. So there's just so many kind of phrases for, that area of marketing. I think what people need to keep in mind is what story and what service product are they trying to deliver, and what do they want to stand for. Be really clear on that first. What I see is a lot of companies getting really down to the minutiae of optimizing their website or optimizing their direct program or looking at their comms, and they're not looking at the whole thing in totality. That's the trick. Think about what your whole kind of journey is, and I agree with that particular phrase. Kind of map that out, and then be really clear about what you're going to do at a number of touch points. But I think the area is interesting and is definitely growing, particularly for professional and financial services. But make sure you're doing the right work with the right people, because you can spend a lot of money perfecting one part of the journey at the expense of others.
What's the one thing you think marketers need to get right in the next 12 months?
Well, that's a big question. There's probably a few answers to that. I think my answer would be to answer the why question. Right. So what I find that a lot of the work we do is a lot of people can tell you what they do, and a lot of people can tell you how they do it. They can't tell you why they do it. So both at a personal level and an organisational level, kind of what's your personal credo? What's your higher purpose? What role are you trying to play in people's lives? If you can answer that and be really clear about it and be humble about it, because I see lots of businesses overstating the role they play in people's lives. If you can be really clear around the why and the role you play, then the rest will follow. The rest will be executional broadly. So that's probably the one thing I'd suggest they do.
Great advice. With the influence of digital, and it's a pretty fast-paced changing world for marketing in these times, do you have any words of wisdom for marketers as they look towards the future?
I think the overriding kind of theme for me is to stay current. So you see marketers and, again, other disciplines, if you're not absolutely staying on top of what's happening both within New Zealand and abroad, you'll be repositioned. And if you're a business that's not dramatically already affected by particularly digital, then get ready, because it's coming, right? So it's a catastrophic change, the digital kind of revolution, right? You just think of, I don't know, Airbnb and hospitality, Uber and taxis. You know, they are examples of competition coming and completely disrupting the incumbent sector. So I think all businesses and people need to be thinking about what impact does digital have on their lives and their sector and their company or their organisation, and stay current as people, stay current as individuals, because then you'll be better prepared to kind of fight what's ever coming.
That's great, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.